Look, all I'm saying is that if one more smug Raxthar diplomat tells me humans are charmingly primitive but ultimately harmless, I'm going to lose it, Kate Rodriguez declared, aggressively stabbing her synthesized coffee with a stirrer that had done nothing to deserve such treatment. Her colleague, Dr. Marcus Taylor, looked up from his datapad with the weary expression of someone who'd heard this particular rant roughly 17 times before. And what exactly would losing it entail? Planning to single-handedly declare war on the most technologically advanced species in the Galactic Council. Don't tempt me. Kate's coffee stirrer snapped in half. Damn it! The break room of the United Earth Embassy on Raxthar Prime fell silent save for the gentle hum of atmospheric processors working overtime to maintain Earth normal conditions. The room itself was a perfect metaphor for humanity's current standing in galactic society. Technically present, but somehow always slightly out of place. The furniture was clearly Raxatharian in origin. All sweeping curves and iridescent surfaces that made human standard coffee cups look comically primitive in comparison. You know what really gets me? Kate continued, apparently not requiring an actual response from Marcus. They pat us on the head, metaphorically speaking, since they'd never deigned to make physical contact with us, and act like we're just so adorable for managing to achieve faster-than-light travel with our quaint fusion drives. Marcus set down his datapad, recognizing that actual work wasn't happening until Hurricane Kate had blown herself out. To be fair, their quantum slip drives are more efficient. That's not the point. Kate threw her hands up, nearly launching her remaining half of coffee stirrer across the room. The point is, they treat us like we're some kind of galactic novelty act. Oh look, the humans figured out how to tie their own shoes. How precious. We don't wear shoes with laces anymore, Marcus pointed out, helpful as ever. Kate fixed him with a glare that could have stripped paint. I will end you. The conversation might have continued in this vein indefinitely if not for the sudden arrival of Ambassador Patel. The normally unflappable diplomat burst into the break room with an expression that suggested either the heat death of the universe had been scheduled for next Tuesday or something even worse had happened. Bureaucracy was afoot. They've done it, she announced without preamble. The Raxthar Diplomatic Council has officially classified Earth as a Category 7 developing world in need of benevolent oversight. The remains of Kate's coffee stirrer never stood a chance. They what? She exploded, standing so quickly her chair shot backward and collided with the break room's artistically curved wall. We've been spacefaring for over a century. We have colonies on 17 worlds. We literally helped them solve their atmospheric degradation crisis last year. Using primitive methods, Ambassador Patel quoted with air quotes so aggressive they practically qualified as sign language. They're claiming our solutions, while effective, demonstrate a charming but concerning reliance on brute force approaches rather than elegant quantum manipulation. Marcus, ever the voice of reason, cleared his throat. What exactly does Category 7 status mean for us? It means, the ambassador said with the careful precision of someone delivering very bad news, that all human technological development will need to be approved by a Raxatharian Oversight Committee. For our own good, of course. The silence that followed was the kind that usually precedes either a revolution or a very strongly worded letter. In this case, it preceded both. Kate's voice, when it finally came, was unnaturally calm. So they want oversight? Fine. Let's give them something to oversee. And that's how Operation Petty Revenge, officially designated Operation Diplomatic Realignment, but nobody called it that, began. The first sign that something was amiss came 3 standard weeks later, when the Raxatharian Oversight Committee received a formal request for approval of a human research project. The document was flawlessly formatted, meticulously detailed, and contained exactly 2,437 footnotes. Is this some kind of joke? High Overseer Zelax demanded, their crystalline sensory filaments vibrating with irritation. They want to research the potential applications of... What exactly is a potato cannon? Their assistant, Junior Overseer Vixtil, brought up the relevant diagrams. It appears to be a projectile launcher utilizing preserved tubers as ammunition, Honored One. The humans claim it's vital to their understanding of, let me see, practical applications of pneumatic propulsion systems in low-technology environments. And they need 17 separate research facilities across 3 star systems to study this? According to the documentation, yes. They're very insistent about the need for thorough peer review. The High Overseer's filaments drooped. Approve it. It's clearly pointless, but at least they're following proper procedures. That was their first mistake. The Potato Cannon Research Initiative was followed by requests for studies on acoustic resonance patterns in primitive percussion instruments. better known as drum circles, thermal distribution mechanics in manually agitated grain-based nutrition cylinders, teaching aliens how to make toast, and biomechanical impact analysis of rapid periodic limb movements, jumping up and down while making rude gestures. Each request was accompanied by thousands of pages of supporting documentation, everyone requiring individual review and response. The Oversight Committee's processing capacity was starting to strain. But that was just the beginning. They're reviewing every single request, Kate reported gleefully during what had become a daily strategy session in the embassy break room. In detail. Did you know they spent 3 days analyzing our proposal for studying the aerodynamic properties of paper airplanes? Marcus, who had initially opposed Operation Petty Revenge, but had been won over by the sheer artistry of it all, grinned. Did they approve the funding for the International Paper Airplane Institute? Better. They suggested improvements to our experimental methodology and offered to send a team of quantum aerodynamicists as consultants. Ambassador Patel, who had officially recused herself from knowledge of these activities, but somehow always managed to be in the break room during these discussions, coughed delicately. I understand the Oversight Committee's processing backlog has reached unprecedented levels. Tragic, Kate said, not even trying to hide her smile. I suppose we'll just have to submit more requests. By the way, has anyone seen the proposal for researching the cultural significance of yo mama jokes in human diplomatic relations? I have some peer review comments to add. The systematic overwhelming of Raxatherian bureaucracy might have continued indefinitely, if not for what came to be known as the rubber duck incident. It started innocently enough, a request to study the psychological benefits of explaining complex problems to inanimate objects, specifically small rubber waterfowl. The documentation included a requisition for 10 million rubber ducks, citing the need for comprehensive distribution across all human populations for accurate statistical sampling. The Oversight Committee, by this point drowning in human research proposals, approved it without proper review. This was their second mistake. What they failed to notice was the fine print specifying that all 10 million rubber ducks would be programmed to emit a single, specific frequency when squeezed. A frequency that, by sheer coincidence, happened to match the resonant frequency of Raxatherian crystalline sensory filaments. The ducks arrived in diplomatic pouches. Thousands of them. Millions. They showed up in official meetings, in recreational areas, in educational facilities. And then, at precisely 1500 Galactic Standard Time on what would become known as Squeak Day, they all got squeezed. The resulting harmonic resonance wasn't dangerous. Humans had been very careful about that. But it did cause every Raxatherian within range to experience what they later described as the sensation of being tickled by the concept of mathematics itself. The Galactic Council chamber had to be evacuated due to uncontrollable Raxatherian giggling. This, High Overseer Zelax declared the next day, their filaments still twitching occasionally with phantom tickles, has gone far enough. The emergency session of the Oversight Committee had been called to address what some were already calling the greatest crisis in recent Raxatherian history. The realization that humans were, perhaps, not quite as harmless as previously assumed. The rubber duck incident was merely the culmination, Junior Overseer Vixtil reported, bringing up a holographic display of various human research projects. Analysis suggests every single proposal we've received has been part of an elaborately orchestrated demonstration. A demonstration of what? Someone demanded. Of human nature, I believe. This came from the back of the chamber, where an elderly Raxatherian sat quietly observing. Everyone turned to face Professor Zintax, the foremost xenologist on human studies and, until recently, largely ignored by their peers. Explain, the High Overseer commanded. Humans, Professor Zintax began, rising to address the chamber, have a unique characteristic that we've failed to properly appreciate. When faced with restrictions, they don't simply accept or reject them. They systematically explore and exploit every possible loophole while maintaining technical compliance. But why? What's the point of all this? This malicious compliance, the professor supplied. It's a form of protest, yes, but it's also a demonstration of capability. Think about what they've actually accomplished. They've systematically overwhelmed our bureaucratic systems, coordinated a galaxy-wide synchronized event, and demonstrated precise understanding of Raxatherian physiology, all while following every single rule we put in place. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Moreover, the professor continued, they've done it all with technology we dismissed as primitive. No quantum manipulation, no sophisticated AI systems, just, what was the term? Ah yes, brute force approaches. and rubber ducks. Are you suggesting, the High Overseer asked slowly, that we may have miscategorized them? I'm suggesting, Professor Zintax replied, that any species capable of weaponizing bureaucracy itself might deserve a second look at their classification, and perhaps an apology. The official reclassification ceremony was held 2 standard months later. Earth was upgraded from Category 7 to Category 2, with formal recognition of human ingenuity in alternative problem-solving methodologies. Kate watched the proceedings from the embassy break room, now sporting a brand-new coffee machine that had been a gift from the Raxatherian Cultural Exchange Office. You know what the best part is? She asked no one in particular. They still think we were trying our hardest to cause problems. Wait until they find out what humans can do when we're actually putting in effort. Marcus, wise as ever, chose not to respond, but he did squeeze his ceremonial rubber duck once, very quietly, and smiled as a distant titter of Raxatherian laughter echoed through the embassy halls. In the years that followed, pulling a human became galactic shorthand for solving problems in unexpected ways, particularly those involving malicious compliance with bureaucratic systems. The rubber duck became an unofficial symbol of diplomatic relations between Earth and Raxthar Prime, and a small bronze statue of one was installed in the Galactic Council chamber as a reminder that primitive is a dangerous word to throw around carelessly. And if sometimes, during particularly tedious council sessions, someone squeezed a duck and sent the Raxtharian delegates into fits of giggles, well, that was just diplomacy in action. Have you ever wondered, Kate Rodriguez mused, balancing a paperclip on her nose during yet another mandatory Raxtharian cultural sensitivity seminar, how many ways you can use a single paperclip? Marcus Taylor, who had long since learned that Kate's seemingly random questions usually preceded either brilliant ideas or interstellar incidents, often both, didn't look up from his doodling. Is this going somewhere, or are you just trying to avoid listening to another lecture about the proper way to apologize to crystalline beings? I'm serious! The paperclip fell as she sat up straight, eyes gleaming with that particular sparkle that had preceded the now legendary rubber duck incident. The Raxthar are so focused on their quantum this and nano that, they've completely overlooked the potential of simple mechanical solutions. Kate. Marcus's warning tone carried the weight of someone who had filed far too many incident reports in the past year. But it was too late. Ambassador Patel, who had developed an almost supernatural ability to detect brewing chaos, was already making her way over to their corner of the seminar room. Whatever you're planning, the ambassador whispered, taking a seat beside them. Make sure it's documented in triplicate, and cite at least 3 precedents from Galactic Council regulations. Kate's grin widened. Ambassador, have you ever heard of the Swiss Army knife? 1 standard month later, the Raxtharian Office of Technological Assessment received a 47,000-page proposal titled Investigation into Multi-Configurational Applications of Primitive Linear Metal Fastening Devices in Advanced Civilizations, a Cross-Species Study. They want to study paperclips? High Overseer Zelex's sensory filaments twisted in confusion. Didn't we just upgrade their classification specifically to avoid this kind of nonsense? Junior Overseer Vixtil, who had developed a peculiar facial tic whenever human proposals crossed their desk, pulled up the executive summary. According to this, they believe simple mechanical devices might have applications in quantum-shielded environments where our more advanced technologies fail. They cite 17 potential emergency scenarios where paperclips could, and I quote, prove invaluable to galactic civilization. 17? From a bent piece of wire? The full list is in Appendix J, subsection 394. They're requesting permission to establish a Galactic Institute for Simple Mechanical Solutions, with branches in every major spaceport. The High Overseer's filaments drooped. After the rubber ducks, we can't risk dismissing this. Approve it, but send observers. I want to know exactly what they're planning. This, as it turned out, was exactly what Kate had been counting on. The first Galactic Institute for Simple Mechanical Solutions, GSMS, opened on Raxthar Prime with surprisingly little fanfare. The building itself was almost ostentatiously plain by Raxatherian standards. No quantum architecture, no probability-shifted spaces, just simple lines and right angles that made the local crystalline beings distinctly uncomfortable to look at. The Raxatherian observers assigned to monitor the facility reported nothing particularly alarming in the first few weeks. Humans conducted various experiments with paperclips, using them as emergency circuit bypasses, improvised tools, and even primitive lockpicks, though this last application was heavily footnoted with references to historical and educational purposes only. Then came the workshops. "Welcome to Emergency Solutions for Quantum Tech Failures 101, Kate announced to a mixed classroom of humans and increasingly intrigued alien species. "Today we'll be learning how to restart a probability drive using nothing but a paperclip, a rubber band, and spite." The Raxatherian observers took copious notes, particularly on the spite component, which their translation matrices struggled to quantify. Word spread. Other species began sending representatives to learn these primitive but surprisingly effective techniques. The Zorblaxians, after watching a human turn a paperclip into an emergency power conduit, immediately ordered 1 billion units for their space fleet. The Quantum Collective, beings of pure energy, somehow developed an appreciation for the aesthetic simplicity of bent wire. But it wasn't until the cascading quantum failure of 2749 that everything came together. "What do you mean the probability matrices are collapsing?" High Overseer Zelax demanded, their filaments practically vibrating with panic. "That's impossible!" The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been called when every quantum-based system in the Raxatherian central government began failing simultaneously. Ships were stranded in probability spaces, communication networks collapsed, and even the architectural support systems of their crystal spires were beginning to fluctuate. "Some kind of cascading resonance effect," Junior Overseer Vixtil reported, using an actual physical notepad because all their quantum tablets had failed. "The backup systems are trying to compensate, but they're getting pulled into the cascade too. We're looking at a total technological collapse within hours." "The humans," someone suggested desperately. "They're always going on about backup systems and redundancy. Contact their embassy." But the embassy was already contacting them. Kate's holographic image, projected from what appeared to be a modified coffee maker, appeared in the council chamber. "Having some trouble with your quantum tech?" she asked, far too innocently. "This is hardly the time for," the High Overseer began. "Because we've got about 10 million emergency repair kits ready to go. Simple mechanical solutions, guaranteed to work even in total quantum failure. Cost is reasonable, delivery immediate." She paused. "We accept cash, credit, or formal recognition of human ingenuity as valid payment." The High Overseer's filaments went completely still. You planned this? The cascade? Oh no, that's just really bad quantum engineering catching up with you. The solution? Well, Kate held up a paperclip, bent into some impossibly useful shape. "Let's just say we've been preparing for this kind of thing since someone called us primitive. The great quantum cascade of 2749 lasted exactly 47 hours. During that time, human emergency response teams, mostly engineering students with bags full of paperclips and rubber bands, saved countless lives, restored critical systems using improvised mechanical bypasses, and demonstrated that sometimes the simplest solution was the most elegant. The Raxthar, to their credit, took the lesson with surprising grace. The official report praised human ingenuity and recommended immediate classification upgrade to Category 1, with special recognition for unprecedented creativity in preparing for worst-case scenarios. "You know what the really funny part is?" Kate said later, back in the embassy break room. "We actually developed 3 new quantum engineering principles while figuring out how to replace them with paperclips." Marcus, who had just finished his 300th form documenting the creative use of office supplies in emergency situations, looked up. "Please tell me you're not planning to submit those findings." "Already did. The proposal is only 12,000 pages long this time." She grinned. "With a special appendix on using quantum principles to make better paperclips." Ambassador Patel, passing by with her own emergency paperclip supply, just shook her head. "I'll alert the council that they might want to stock up on coffee, and maybe invest in some filing cabinets." In the years that followed, the humble paperclip joined the rubber duck as a symbol of human innovation in the Galactic Council chamber. The Raxthar even began including simple mechanical backup systems in all their quantum devices, though they preferred to call them probability failure contingency mechanisms. And if sometimes, during particularly complex negotiations, a human diplomat would casually bend a paperclip into increasingly impossible shapes while speaking, well, that was just another form of diplomatic communication. After all, you never knew when you might need to save the galaxy with office supplies. "Did you know," Kate Rodriguez said, scrolling through her ancient phone's photo gallery during yet another diplomatic reception, "that humans have been weaponizing jokes since before we invented writing?" Marcus Taylor, who was attempting to explain to a confused Zorblaxian why humans still kept outdated data storage devices for nostalgic purposes, paused mid-sentence. Whatever you're thinking, stop thinking it. Too late. Kate's grin had reached that dangerous level that typically preceded intergalactic incidents. I've been doing some research on the propagation of cultural information packets across species boundaries, and you want to introduce aliens to memes, don't you? Marcus interrupted, already feeling a headache coming on. Introduce? Oh no. I want to systematically analyze their potential applications in cross-species communication and diplomatic relations. She pulled up an image on her phone. Did you know the Raxthur have never seen a cat asking for cheeseburgers? Ambassador Patel, who had developed an almost precognitive ability to detect brewing chaos, materialized beside them. Whatever you're planning, make sure it includes a detailed analysis of potential cultural impact, and at least 4 appendices on historical precedent. Kate's smile widened. Ambassador, have you ever heard of rickrolling? The proposal landed on the High Overseer's desk 3 weeks later. A comprehensive study of human information packet transmission methods and their potential applications in galactic diplomatic communications, with special focus on memetic engineering. High Overseer Zelax's sensory filaments twisted into what their species xenologists had started calling the human-induced stress configuration. After the paper clips and the rubber ducks, they muttered. Surely they can't. Junior Overseer Vixtil, whose facial tic had evolved into a full-body twitch whenever human proposals crossed their desk, brought up the executive summary. They're requesting permission to establish a Center for Memetic Studies and Cross-Species Cultural Exchange. The proposal includes 73,928 example memes with detailed analysis of their psychological impact. And what exactly is a meme? According to this, it's a self-replicating unit of cultural information that spreads through repetition and modification. Vic still paused. They've included something called loss as example A. I've been staring at it for 20 minutes and I still don't understand why it's significant. Approve it, the High Overseer sighed. But triple the observation team. After the paperclip protocol, we can't be too careful. This, as it would turn out, was their first mistake. Their second was actually looking at the memes themselves. The Center for Memetic Studies opened with what humans called a soft launch, but what any other species would have called a cultural invasion. The building itself was unremarkable, except for the massive screen on its facade displaying something called a neon cat on endless loop. Within days, Raxtharian younglings were observed making keyboard cat noises during formal ceremonies. The Zorblaxian trade fleet reported their entire command staff had become obsessed with something called Doge, and had begun speaking entirely in broken sentences peppered with much and very. But it was the diplomatic impact that really caught everyone off guard. You can't just... High Overseer Zelax's filaments were practically tied in knots as they addressed the Galactic Council. You can't conduct serious negotiations by responding to proposals with pictures of a white bird saying honk. Why not? Kate asked from her position at the human delegation's table. The goose meme perfectly encapsulates our position on the proposed trade restrictions. It's chaotic, disruptive, and ultimately impossible to ignore, just like the economic impact of your policy would be. But it's not proper diplomatic protocol. Neither is trying to smuggle probability manipulators into our space disguised as food replicators. Yet here we are. She pulled up another image. Would you prefer we respond with Drake no Drake yes format instead? We have a whole presentation prepared. The council chamber erupted into chaos as various species either protested the breach of protocol or demanded to see more examples of this new communication method. The Quantum Collective, in particular, had become oddly fascinated with something called surreal memes. But that was just the beginning. The meme war, as it would later be known, reached its peak during the Galactic Trade Summit of 2750. The Raxthur, attempting to regain control of the situation, had banned all non-traditional communication methods from the proceedings. Kate's response was to submit the entire human trade proposal in the form of an elaborate, expanding brain meme, with each level representing increasingly complex economic policies. The footnotes alone included references to stonks, this is fine, and 17 different variations of modern problems require modern solutions. The truly insidious part was that it worked. Other species began adopting the format for their own proposals, finding that complex policies were somehow easier to understand when presented alongside pictures of increasingly glowing brains. Do you realize what you've done? Marcus asked as they watched the Zorblaxian delegation present their counter-proposal, using a distracted boyfriend format. You've fundamentally altered how galactic diplomacy works. Actually, Kate said, pulling up something on her phone. That wasn't even my final form. That's when the rickrolls began. It started small. A few diplomatic communiques that, when opened, played a certain late 20th century musical number. But it spread. Oh, how it spread. The Raxthar discovered that their quantum communication networks were particularly vulnerable to what humans called earworms. The song embedded itself in their crystalline communication matrices, creating what xenomusicologists would later term quantum rickrolling, the spontaneous generation of Rick Astley's voice in random probability spaces. High Overseer Zelax called an emergency session of the council after their entire government complex spent 6 hours spontaneously dancing to Never Gonna Give You Up. "This has to stop!" they demanded, filaments still swaying slightly to the phantom beat. Kate, who had been invited to explain the phenomenon, simply pulled up another meme. "I like your funny words, Magic Man." What does that even mean? Exactly, she grinned. Welcome to human culture, where meaning is fluid and everything is a reference to something else. Did you really think our primitive communication methods were simple? We've been weaponizing inside jokes since before we left our planet. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Every rubber duck, every paperclip, every meme, they're all part of the same thing, she continued. Humans don't just adapt to communication methods. We transform them. We take simple things and layer them with meaning until they become something else entirely. You thought we were primitive because we didn't use quantum entanglement to talk? We've been quantum entangling ideas this whole time. The aftermath of the meme war led to the establishment of the first Galactic Department of Memetic Communication. The Raxthar, showing remarkable adaptability, even began developing their own species-specific memes, though their attempts to understand loss continued to drive their xenologists to distraction. "You know what the really funny part is?" Kate said, back in the embassy break room that had started it all. "We haven't even shown them TikTok yet." Marcus, who had just finished filing a report explaining why E was now considered a valid diplomatic response in certain situations, looked up in horror. "Don't you dare!" Ambassador Patel, passing by with a datapad displaying what suspiciously looked like a "this is fine" meme, just smiled. "I'll start preparing the proposal. How does an investigation into temporally limited audio-visual information packets and their impact on cross-species cultural exchange sound?" In the years that followed, the Galactic Council chamber installed a dedicated meme display system alongside its rubber duck statue and emergency paperclip supply. Young diplomats were required to study classic human memetic engineering alongside traditional protocol. And if sometimes, during particularly tense negotiations, a strategic rickroll could accomplish what hours of formal discussion couldn't, well, that was just another tool in humanity's increasingly bizarre diplomatic arsenal. After all, in space, everyone can hear you meme.